We are here now with Laurent Pech, who is a professor and dean of the law school at Middlesex University in London, and he is one of the biggest experts on the rule of law in the European Union.
Well, the short answer is the situation isn't great as far as the rule of law in the EU is concerned. We have some new problems that have emerged in the past few years. There is something we have called rule of law backsliding happening in Europe. So what is that? What is it happening? It's happening in Poland. So we're talking about a phenomenon whereby checks and balances are being undermined by government, and we're struggling at the moment to decide what's the best course of action to actually address what is known as rule of law backsliding. So the situation isn't great, but that's one of the many crises faced by the EU. Mm-hmm. Technically, this is a very important question from the point of view of the EU, because the EU legal system is based, among other things, on compliance with the rule of law. So once you start violating the rule of law, then you are threatening the functioning of the EU legal system. So, for instance, why is the Commission so concerned about the situation in Poland? Because from the point of view of the European Commission, the independence of the judiciary has been so much undermined that Poland cannot no longer be Poland can no longer perhaps be entrusted to comply effectively with EU law. So there is a threat to the effectiveness and full compliance with EU law in Poland. So this is why essentially the Commission has decided to investigate the situation in Poland, and the investigation is still ongoing. The first time we talk about rule of law backsliding in the EU was not actually in relation to Poland, but in relation to Hungary, where the situation also has been subject to a lot of discussion with a lot of civil society groups. In fact, the European Parliament itself has called for some sanctions to be adopted against the current Hungarian government for violating not only the rule of law, but also the principle of respect with human rights. So technically, what we're talking about essentially is at least in 2 EU countries, what we are perhaps witnessing is, I'm afraid, the progressive establishment of one-party states, which is not compatible with the values on which the EU is based. So yes, I did mention the Commission and the European Parliament. The missing party, if I may say, in this debate is the European Council. Now, what the European Council has done is, has organized, established in 2014, the so-called rule of law dialogue. So what they do, the national governments, essentially, of the EU 28, they meet at least once a year to discuss the rule of law situation in each of the member states. But this hasn't been very effective because essentially there is a lack of transparency. We don't really know what they are talking about. I mean, we know the subject matters, and nothing is really done whenever problems are identified. So this is a very soft discursive approach, and which doesn't seem to be useful. So by contrast, the Commission has played a leading role on this issue and has been trying to do something about about the problems I have identified in Poland and Hungary. And the Parliament has also provided the Commission with some support, but so far it doesn't seem to have had any meaningful impact on the ground.